Alrighty, welcome to the conclusion of my little comparison that I did between XP12 and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I did 3 different flights, and I did those on X-Plane and on Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it showed a lot of differences between these two sims. The first one and the most obvious one is the presentation. Usually I don't really care about graphics. Graphics for me don't make or break a game, but in the flight simming world, it's a little bit different. Flight simming is a lot about immersion and it's a lot about exploration. Can I go to a place where I've never been before and look what it's like to be there? So I really want to see, what does a sunset look like in Gibraltar? What does a cloudy, hazy day look like in San Francisco? What's a rainy day look like in Portugal, in Lisbon? And I can get all that in Microsoft Flight Simulator, no problem. Wherever I go, it looks different. Whatever the weather situation is, it looks different. Remember that mountain that poked through the clouds near San Francisco. And remember the hazy fly over the city of San Francisco. I remember the bridge of Lisbon that we flew over. I don't really remember anything like that in X-Plane. I remember that LA had a very brown ground texture. And I remember that San Francisco had the same brown ground texture, and Lisbon had the same brown ground texture, and everywhere you go you see the same generic buildings, you see the same brown ground texture, and that doesn't really motivate me to go and explore. Like, again, wherever I go in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I know I haven't been there, I know I see something different. And X-Plane, I see the same thing over and over again. Also, the entire weather simulation is way uglier in X-Plane. I mean, you've seen the clouds. I made a comparison when we were over San Francisco or over the Bay Area, and the clouds got thicker. They really gradually got thicker and hazier in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but in X-Plane they just suddenly got these ugly clouds. The same thing is for the flight from Portugal to Gibraltar. There were some moments where the clouds looked okay in X-Plane, but for the most part, Flight Simulator really hits the ball out of the park here with that. So there isn't really a lot that I can give X-Plane here. I know X-Plane will have a lot of add-ons that will improve that. You will have your X-Enviro and you will have your Ortho, where we can download hundreds of exabytes of stuff so it looks better on the ground. But in Flight Simulator I don't have to do all that. It just works out of the box. You install it and you can go anywhere in the world and it will look a lot like what it actually looks like. Yeah, there's one thing where X-Plane is ahead though, and that is night flying between vanilla airports. So in Microsoft Flight Simulator, for some reason, all vanilla airports except for the bespoke ones are absolute dark at night. You've seen the flight that I did between the BER and Charles de Gaulle. That was okay, but the BER was an add-on. So I don't want to buy an add-on airport for every night flight that I want to do from these airports. So I think in this regard I would use X-Plane. A quick word on performance here. On average the frame rate was better in X-Plane, but keep in mind that I basically had these settings maxed out for Microsoft Flight Simulator, whereas X-Plane was running on kind of medium settings. First of all, I didn't really know why I would crank up the settings. It wasn't really that good to look at anyway. And secondly, the hit on performance was really, really bad in X-Plane, especially when I crank up the anti-aliasing. If you game in 4K, you need a graphics card with a pretty high video memory. We've seen that on average, the video memory usage was way over 10 gigabytes. I think in Flight Simulator it was going up as high as 14 gigabytes. I don't know, I've seen people talking about video card memory usage and you don't need more than 8 gigabytes. I say that's not true, at least not for Flight Sim. So yeah, keep that in mind if you want to get a graphics card, if you want to game in 4K, if you want to use your Flight Simulator in 4K. Get a graphics card that has at least, I say, 16 gigabytes of memory. So a word about the sounds. I think the sounds are on par in both, but the sounds depend a lot on the plane that you're using. And oftentimes these are add-on planes. In general, I say the interior sounds, like from the buttons and knobs and switches and so forth, they're better in X-Plane, but Flight Simulator has better environment and exterior sounds. Like at the airport in LA, it was absolutely quiet in X-Plane. No idea what was going on there. Yeah, so the presentation all in all, so the entire graphics sounds department, again, very important for flight simming. That's a clear landslide for Flight Simulator. So okay, now let's talk about the planes of these sims. X-Plane historically has a very good 737, which is way better than the vanilla A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. But their flagship aircraft, the A330, has the wrong FMC for some reason. It doesn't have an Airbus FMC, it has a 737 FMC. No idea what's up with that. So most of the vanilla airplanes that Microsoft Flight Simulator comes with are pretty bad. But there is now an A310 from Builds, which is free, which is a quote-unquote study level, and it's supposed to be very, very good. I hear a lot of positive things about that. So also works on the ATR 4272, which I'm really excited for, because that's a small regional aircraft that's used in a lot of island hopping and so forth, and I would really like to do that in that plane. And don't forget about the absolute superb fly-by-wire mod for the A320neo. This is also free, so this is why I treat these planes as quote-unquote vanilla planes, because they are basically free. You can have them, no problem. And the fly-by-wire A320 is, in my opinion, better than any X-Plane vanilla aircraft. But the reality of the situation is that most people will use add-on planes. And so I had the TOLUS and the LVFR, and the TOLUS absolutely destroyed the LVFR. The LVFR looks better, it has cool liveries, it sounds pretty nice, has a nicer passenger cabins with a passenger in it. It's a really fun little aircraft, I absolutely like it. But in terms of a realistic depiction of an A319, between Microsoft Flight Simulator and X-Plane, there's only the TOLUS. And that's really great, I have to say. The buttons, the switches, the knobs make all great sounds. I absolutely loved it. The displays had this reflection, everything was working, everything was very detailed. It's a great plane. After the San Francisco flight, I thought, yeah, that's kind of the old cliche. X-Plane is for simmers and Flight Simulators is more for gamers. But then along came the Phoenix A320. Oh boy. It looks better, it sounds better, it has a better passenger cabin, the textures were nicer, the liveries were countless. You can have these 8K liveries, and it has a very realistic depiction of the A320. Everything was working, and on top of all that, you get a SimBrief and a Navigraph integration. And on top of all that, keep in mind that the Phoenix A320 only costs like somewhere between 50 and 60 bucks, whereas the TOLUS costs 90. So unless it has to be an A319, or in case of the TOLUS, they also have an A321. If you just want to have one plane from the A320 family, the Phoenix is, in my opinion, the best. One word about this old discussion: X-Plane has the better, quote-unquote, better flight model. My Gibraltar hand-flown landings indeed showed a huge difference between how these planes feel. I know the A320 isn't exactly the A319, but the difference was bigger than that. The X-Plane A319, or X-Plane in general, I think the planes, they are more responsive, they are more direct, and they are more fun to fly, more fun to hand fly. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is more realistic. I'm not a real-world pilot, so I cannot really draw a conclusion. I will have to leave that to a real-world pilot, but it struck me as a little bit too easy. And I get it, it's more fun. Mastering a difficult challenge quicker is more fun, it's more satisfying, but again, I don't know if it's more realistic. And one thing in terms of X-Plane and hand-flying planes, there isn't a working rudder. At least I cannot bind my third joystick axis to the rudder. Yeah, I can set the front wheel tiller to that, and then I can bind the roll to the rudder. I think it will be fine if you have rudder pedals. I think it's still a no-go. So here's what I think about these 2 sims after the 6 flights in 3 different planes. I really wish I could tell you that X-Plane is on par and it really caught up to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that both have their strengths and weaknesses, and after all, they are pretty close and neck on neck. But as of now, there's a clear winner here, and that's Microsoft Flight Simulator. It looks better, it sounds better, it's more immersive, and with the fly-by-wire and the Builds A310, It also has the better vanilla aircrafts, at least the better airliner, although they are not technically vanilla, but they are free. There were two things where I would like to explain more than I like Flight Simulator. One was hand flying planes. And again, I talked about this, maybe this is not because they are more realistic, but they are easier or whatever, more direct. And the other aspect is night flying between vanilla airports. For now, Microsoft Flight Simulator is the clear winner. This may change in the future when we get more add-on planes to X-Plane. One of the strengths of X-Plane was that you can basically have any aircraft that you want. Like, I think they had every Boeing and every Airbus airliner in X-Plane 11 that ever existed, I think. I don't know if this is probably a little bit exaggerated, but they had a lot of these. And in Microsoft Flight Simulator, we don't have a lot of airplanes. At least not a lot of really good ones that are on study level, quote unquote study level. Like, I think we have the A310, the Fly-by-Wire, the Phoenix, the PMDG 737, and the CRJ 700, 900, whatever. And I think that's about it. And yeah, at the moment we don't have any working long-range aircraft or any proper long-range aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We have a 787, which is atrocious. We have a 747-8, which is atrocious. We have a 777, which is basically just a reskin of said atrocious 747. Fly-by-Wire is currently working on an A380 that could be very exciting, but it's more than a year away. They say this is not coming anytime soon. And PMDG is rumored to be working on their 777. They want to bring that to Microsoft Flight Simulator. That could be very good. But X-Plane, you've seen how quickly Tolis adapted their A319 to X-Plane 12, and I think the other add-on aircrafts will follow. Long-range flying could be a thing for X-Plane only for a year or so, if all these add-on aircrafts coming very soon. Yeah, but with all these aircrafts coming, we have a very exciting future ahead of us, I think, with both these simulators. But for now, there's a clear winner, there's a clear recommendation from my side, and that is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Yeah, with that, I leave you here and I talk to you in the next one. Take care and tschüss, ne?